Welcome to the Explainer. So, we are staring down the barrel of an incredibly high-stakes, rapidly approaching geopolitical moment, the May 2026 Trump-Xi summit in Beijing. Look, when the leaders of the world's two largest economies meet, the shockwaves are naturally felt everywhere. But today, we're going to look at this global event through a very specific, absolutely fascinating lens. What does this massive summit actually mean for global middle powers? And more specifically, what does it mean for the ultimate geopolitical tightrope walker, Pakistan? You might be wondering, why does this matter to us? Well, because how middle powers navigate this clash is going to dictate the future of global supply chains, consumer tech prices, and international security. We're going to unpack the strategies, the massive risks, and the incredibly delicate balancing act required to just survive in an era of great power competition.
Okay, let's dive into this and map out our explainer today. We'll start with the May 2026 context, examine the great power paradox, explore what we call the Goldilocks upsides, navigate the darker scenarios, and finally, break down a proactive playbook.
All right, Section 1, the May 2026 context, managing the unmanageable.
To really get why the stakes are so high here, we have to look at the incredibly turbulent global environment leading up to this historic summit. Just look at the rapid escalation of global events here. We kick off with the October 2025 Busan meeting between President Trump and President Xi. Fast forward just a bit to January 2026, and Pakistan formally launches CPEC 2.0, the massive China-Pakistan Economic Corridor Initiative. Then, boom, the critical delay. The Beijing summit was originally slated for April, but it gets pushed back to May due to the intensifying Iran war and the cascading, completely chaotic closures of the Strait of Hormuz. So you can see this timeline shows us that this summit isn't just happening in a vacuum. It's taking place right in the middle of shattered global supply chains and massive energy market shocks.
And honestly, that turbulent context brings us right to the core objective of the meeting itself. The Brookings analysts absolutely hit the nail on the head here. The summit is defined more by what it aims to avoid, a damaging breakdown, than by what it seeks to achieve. Both Washington and Beijing are sitting down under immense pressure right now. They're locked in this fierce technology competition over semiconductors and rare earth minerals, plus they are both navigating severe tariff escalations. Because of all that, the expectations here are really for incremental outcomes and basic stability, rather than some grand historical reset.
Moving right along to Section 2, the great power paradox and all-weather friend.
The absolute core of this dilemma is perfectly captured right here. For Pakistan, the real test is not choosing between the dragon and the eagle, it is building the institutional strength to engage both effectively simultaneously. You see, Islamabad's true challenge isn't about simply picking a side. It's about pulling off this monumental balancing act, ensuring it can actually extract value from both relationships without completely angering the other.
And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between these two relationships. Over on the left, we've got China. Now, this relationship is structural and enduring. It is built on deep physical integration like CPEC 2.0, and Beijing literally considers Pakistan its iron brother. It's foundational. Now, jump over to the right side, the United States. This operates on a completely different frequency. It's tactical, it's transactional, and it is highly episodic. Right now, Washington's renewed interest is driven by immediate strategic needs, things like critical minerals, regional security post-Iran conflict, and their ongoing frustration with India's trade policies. These are two totally different relationship models, yet both are absolutely vital for Pakistan to survive.
To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of Beijing's structural integration, just take a look at this massive figure, $25 billion. That is the amount of infrastructure investment injected from China into Pakistan during just the first phase of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. We're talking about adding 8,000 megawatts to the national grid and creating nearly 200,000 jobs. When you visualize that number, it instantly clicks exactly why the Beijing relationship is considered the structural, unshakable foundation of Pakistan's foreign policy.
Okay, Section 3, the Goldilocks upsides, a stable summit.
In diplomatic circles, we call a successful outcome to these talks the Goldilocks outcome. As it's defined here, this is a diplomatic result that is good enough to reduce conflict and tension, but not so warm as to suggest a G2 condominium, meaning we definitely don't want a world exclusively co-ruled by Washington and Beijing. For middle powers, this just right temperature is absolutely perfect. It widens the window for multi-alignment, giving a nation like Pakistan the breathing room to engage both powers economically and diplomatically without being heavily coerced into publicly aligning with just one. So, if this Goldilocks scenario actually plays out, the upsides for Pakistan are highly specific and super beneficial.
First off, as we noted, there is way less pressure to choose sides. Second, and this is incredibly important, is energy market relief. A coordinated US-China push to stabilize the Strait of Hormuz would lower oil prices. And for an import-heavy economy, cheaper oil isn't just nice to have, it's literally a matter of national survival. Third, we'd likely see less hostile US scrutiny regarding the CPEC 2.0 developments, giving Pakistan some much-needed room to rebrand it as a technology and agricultural partnership. And finally, a stable summit creates space for renewed multilateral engagement on regional issues like Afghanistan.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, navigating darker scenarios, the risks and fault lines.
Now, take a look at this single dramatic figure, 72%. That is the portion of external bilateral debt that Pakistan currently owes to China. If the dragon and the eagle actually clash in Beijing, this structural vulnerability becomes a massive, massive risk. Beijing could easily use its debt leverage more overtly to demand compliance, while Washington could deploy its own influence over the IMF to extract its own political concessions. It really just highlights how incredibly vulnerable Islamabad is to dollar dependency and the outright weaponization of debt.
And honestly, beyond just the weaponization of debt, a diplomatic breakdown triggers a whole cascade of geopolitical nightmares. We could be looking at rapidly intensified great power rivalry right across the board. Then there's the huge risk of technology decoupling. Pakistan is heavily integrated with Chinese telecom giants like Huawei and ZTE. So if the US suddenly demands a strict split in technology ecosystems, Pakistan is stuck in an impossible position regarding its 21st century digital future. And let's not forget the ambiguous Taiwan concessions. Any sudden shifts or US retrenchment in Indo-Pacific security could fundamentally alter Washington's interest in maintaining Pakistan as a partner at all.
Which brings us to Section 5, a proactive playbook, statecraft over diplomacy.
The briefing makes a very firm, undeniable argument here. Proactive economic statecraft is required, not just neutrality. That long-standing traditional policy of simply maintaining strategic autonomy, yeah, that's just not enough anymore. A nation actually has to create genuine economic value and build institutional strength so it doesn't just end up as a pawn in someone else's geopolitical strategy.
Let's move to the next part and see how this builds into a specific 5-step survival playbook. Step 1. Accelerate CPEC 2.0 governance reforms to keep Chinese confidence high. Step 2. Monetize critical minerals strategically. By launching international competitive tenders, Pakistan cleverly avoids giving either the US or China a monopoly, which preserves its leverage. Step 3. Build US institutional depth. This means moving beyond just fleeting personal diplomacy to secure durable congressional agreements in areas like climate and the digital economy. Step 4. Invest in tech sovereignty by actively diversifying tech vendors. And Step 5. Activate regional connectivity diplomacy, really positioning the country as a vital solution provider that connects Central Asia directly to the Arabian Sea.
And that leads us to this really powerful concluding thought from the text. Between dragons and eagles, build your own wings. The ultimate takeaway here is that middle powers absolutely cannot define themselves entirely through the prism of great power competition. They have to be the authors of their own strategies, built on solid domestic foundations of education, technology, and industry, completely regardless of what happens in Beijing.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative question to ponder. As the May 2026 summit opens a delicate window of opportunity, how skillfully will Islamabad climb through it to define its geopolitical trajectory for the decade ahead? The decisions being made right now are literally going to echo for generations. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.